Well, good day to you. It is June the 20th, and because it's a leap year, if you're living in the Northern Hemisphere, this is the first day of summer, which means it's the longest day of the year, which is one of my favorite times of the year, when it's light up until like about 9 o'clock-ish here in Georgia. Unfortunately, I know that if you're living south of the equator, you got the exact opposite thing going on, but it always flips, it always goes back. It's been doing that since the dawn of time, but I get to enjoy it while we have it. But anyway, my name is Gary Willing, and as always, I want to welcome everyone to Search for Signs. And as I always like to do, I just want to do three things before I start this video. First, I just want to encourage everyone, whether you heard this information before or not, to check out some more information about Maitreya on the websites that I provided links for in the description portion of every one of these videos. I didn't agree with this information when I first read it. It took me doing my own research before I started to get the ring of truth. It had started to have the ring of truth for me. And then, as they say, Katie barred the door. And I really got into this information and started applying some of the teachings I was learning directly from Maitreya or through some of the teachings that he's already given out through Benjamin Creme and through the books of the Sharon National groups and so forth. And I've noticed that it changed my life. So that's why I always encourage everyone to at least just investigate it. You might not see there's any truth to it, and there's nothing wrong with that. But there is other information on those sites that might suit you and might be more interesting to you if you're not that interested in who and what I think Maitreya is and what he means for humanity. I.e., there's information about UFOs. It might be something you might be interested in or something like that. So hopefully you'll check out some of those sites. They're all free. The information is free. So now if you want to come back and join the discussion, this is the second thing. I always encourage everyone to at least post a comment. Let me know what you think. Oftentimes I'll address those comments like I'm going to do today, even if you disagree with what I have to say. You can also get a question to me by posting your question in the comment section. You can email me those questions at searchforsigns@mail.com. And then thirdly, before I start, this is my favorite time of the episode because I get to thank everyone from the bottom of my heart who has commented and asked a question. And even if you didn't comment or ask a question, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for showing enough interest to listen to this video this long. So anyway, thank you very much for doing that. Now, as I just said, there are people who don't agree with what I have to say and they comment, and oftentimes I do address their comments. So I'm going to address Aunt Brad, who happened to say the same thing that he says a lot. It has to do with the image that I have of Jesus in the background, along with the image of Sai Baba, Benjamin Creme, the Master Morya, the Master Rakuzi, the Master Kuthumi, the Master Jwal, and of course Maitreya. He says, isn't it completely contradictory that you declare your love for your master while using the image of the master who died on a cross as a sacrifice for us? Now, there's no question at the end of that, so it's probably a rhetorical statement. Let me just answer that very simply. I see no contradiction in the teachings of Jesus and the teachings of Maitreya. I do think that Jesus 2,000 years ago was speaking the truth. Just as you mentioned, the Buddha was speaking the truth. The truth about life, the truth about humanity, the truth about the laws of life, about the need for harmlessness, the need to forgive, those kind of things. They both talked about it in very similar ways, because it's all coming from this. All this information comes from the same source. Now, what divides people, what creates confusion in the minds of people when it comes to anything, whether it's politics, economics, spiritual matters, religion, that kind of thing, is ideology. Now, I believe I'm standing on some level of authority, and I'm not saying I'm an authority, but authority about what I'm saying in reference to ideologies dividing, and really it's all very similar, is because central throughout all the religions, the major religions, is the laws of life, the need to love, the need to forgive, the law of cause and effect, and different stories talking about the laws of cause and effect to teach the people of wherever they were, whether it was Hindus in India or Muslims in the Middle East or Christians in the Middle East and that kind of stuff. When Jesus was talking about what you sow shall you reap, he was talking about the same thing that Krishna was talking about in the Bhagavad Gita, the law of cause and effect. So the teachings are very similar, and you'll find when you listen to Maitreya, he will be speaking at great length about the law of cause and effect, in much deeper measure than Jesus did, or even Krishna or the Buddha did, because they were speaking to a far more uneducated humanity than Maitreya gets to speak to today. We are far more knowledgeable of ourselves, of the universe as a whole, scientifically, and those kind of things. For the most part, most people are pretty educated and can grasp higher level ideas than they could 2,000 or 5,000 years ago. It just depends on what the teacher we're talking about. So he's speaking to a different humanity, but he's speaking about the same truths that they spoke. Okay, so that's one thing. And if you read the different religious texts, you'll see that they are speaking about the same laws of life. The law of cause and effect, the law of rebirth, which is even in the Bible, talking about the law of reincarnation. And I can go through some different examples if you so choose, but right now let me just go on to the next thing that I want to say. The other thing too that is central throughout all the religious texts is the coming back again of a teacher. The Christians are awaiting the Christ, the Muslims are awaiting Imam Mahdi, the Buddhists are awaiting the fifth Buddha, the Messiah is awaited by the Jews, and the Kalki avatar is awaited by the Hindus. So they're all waiting for a teacher to come back. The other thing too, that if you do some research and you see some of the many miracle signs on some of these websites that I've posted links for in the description portion of these videos, you will see that the miracles that have happened over the last few decades have happened to Christians here in the United States, Europe, and around the world, Muslims here in the United States, in the Middle East, and around the world, Hindus here in the United States and in the West and around the world. The Jewish faith have had their own miracles. The Native Americans have had their own miracles. People of no particular faith have had their own miracles. And every single time that this happens, whether it's a miracle or a strange phenomena for a large group of people or individually, I guarantee you those people were left with a greater sense of hope after experiencing these miracles. Whether it's, like I said, I can go on. It's the Hindu milk miracle for the Hindus, the weeping icons for the Catholics, the image of the Madonna on the side of the building in Clearwater, Florida, and on and on and on. And in some cases, millions of people experience these miracles and were left with a greater sense of hope. And they have different backgrounds, different religious views, and everything. So if the hope for mankind is, all these people are having hope, then it's true to say that the hope for mankind is for all of mankind and not just for one particular religion. So I don't think it's accurate to think and go around through and live life that your religious view is correct and somebody else's religious view is wrong. Because I think we all get it right and we all got it wrong. It's just, and it's not a question of either or, it's a question of and, really. Now, I know that you can quote the Bible and contradict what I'm saying, and that's your right to do. I'm just saying, from my perspective, looking at it, there is no contradiction between the teachings of Jesus and Maitreya. The things that people have thought that Jesus said, and perhaps he did actually say it, and it wasn't something that somebody just wrote in there, that even though he said it, doesn't necessarily mean that we understand exactly what he was talking about. When he said, I am the way, the truth, and the life, no one come to the Father through me, people think that means that they should just believe in Jesus. That's all they have to do is just believe in Jesus. That's what their pastors tell them in church. You can be as mean and as nasty as you so choose. As long as you believe in Jesus, ask for Jesus for forgiveness, boom, you're golden. Well, I don't think that's exactly what it was intended to mean when he said it like that. But that's for each and every one of us to come up with the truth of that statement for ourselves. I just don't agree with what most Christians think that statement to be. Now, Maitreya, I believe, is the way-to teacher for not only the Christians, but also for the Muslims, the Jews, the Hindus, the Buddhists, and people of no particular religious faith, such as myself, as just a teacher. And there was a time when he was living in the Asian community of London where some people were starting to suspect that he was perhaps the Imam Mahdi. There was a little bit of rumors going around that tight-knit neighborhood that he lived in, that he could be the Imam Mahdi. And some people gathered the courage to ask him, are you the Imam Mahdi? Now, he didn't just answer and say yes, even though that is a name that he is known for. He is looked by the Muslims as the Imam Mahdi, and he knows that to be true. But rather than saying yes, he put it like this. Well, if I'm the Imam Mahdi for the Muslims, then what about the Messiah for the Jews? And remember, the Jews and Muslims aren't really chummy with one another. And then he would say, well, if I'm the Messiah for the Jews or the Imam Mahdi for the Muslims, what about the Kalki Avatar for the Hindus or the Christ for the Christians? See, all these different religious groups at their extremes despise these other groups. And it's the divisions that are doing it. It's the ideologies that are doing it, not the truths of the teacher that's causing the divisions. So Maitreya said that these are just names that cause nothing but confusion. He said, and I quote, just look to him as a teacher. That's it. Because that's really all he is. And we are always constantly bombarded with information, whether it's online or in our own lives, that it's hard to tell what's true and what isn't true. And we're getting to the point in our life, and I'm going to talk about something in relation to politics because I had some political references here and some comments that came my way today. But we're even seeing politicians who we usually trust to we always know that politicians lie to us, right? But not to the extreme that is going on today, where they really are, as the Bible put it, throwing truth to the ground, right? Where you just really can't tell what's up or down. If you just go back to what Jesus said 2,000 years ago, a tree is known by its fruit. You can kind of cipher through a lot of the bull crap and the disinformation and the illusion and the lies that people tell you and the false teachings that people try to give you by just looking to see if I apply this, did I get exactly what they promised me? Then you could see whether it's true or not, right? So if you look at what Maitreya said, without sharing there will be no justice. Without sharing there can be no justice. Without justice there can be no peace, and without peace there will be no future. If you look at that warning or that teaching that he's already given to the world, and you do a little digging, and you look for the Marshall Plan, and I always talk about this because the masters said that this was the first time that the principle of sharing was ever even tried by humanity. And you start to look and investigate the nations that participated in the Marshall Plan right after World War II. Some of those nations were at war with one another. Perhaps they didn't trust one another very well before this, but if you look at all those nations, they all trust one another now. None of them have gone to war with one another since then. It created goodwill amongst those nations. That's the fruit of the principle of sharing, which is central to the teaching of Maitreya, that he'll be giving to the world and that kind of thing. So I just ask you to kind of apply it that way. And the thing that gave me the ring of truth for this information, not only by investigating it, but when I started to apply the teachings of Maitreya's from Ben's master, I started to notice that the way that I perceive life, the way that I perceive other people changed. I became more accepting, more loving. So to say that it's from Satan and it's deception, I think it's just because you have not taken the time to really look at this. Your ideologies divide, and you're not unique in that. That's something that I think we all do. And Maitreya will hopefully when he starts to teach humanity directly, I think a lot of those ideologies, and especially the people who aren't maybe as extreme, will start to go, there is a similarity between people that live in the United States and people that live in the Middle East. We all cherish our children's future, and we all breathe the same air, as Kennedy said, speaking to the unity of humanity and the oneness of humanity. But anyway, hopefully that helps Aunt Brad or whoever else is listening. All right, let's get on to some other comments that came my way. Gary, without justice, there is no peace. There was an election interference, and without justice, will you get it? Presidents are selected, not elected. Well, that's an interesting thought. The other thing you said was socialism doesn't work. If everyone gets the same, there is no incentive to do anything more. I would beg to differ because I work with people all the time in a very commercialized company, and people don't have any incentive to show up to work on time, to do anything during their work day or anything like that. It's like pulling teeth every day to get anything out of people. And when I took the management role, I started to really see it. I was like, wow, there is no incentive because people are getting beaten down by the system. Socialism is a just system, but socialism, communism, and capitalism are all ideologies, just like I was talking to Aunt Brad about religion. And it's not a question of either or, it's a question of and. So Maitreya says that capitalism and socialism are like two wheels on the same cart. You can't have one without the other. So there will be capitalism, when the principle of sharing starts to take place, but it won't be quite as pronounced as it is today. There won't be such extremes of riches and poverty, of people literally starving to death for no reason. It's a more humane way of practicing economics, where people have food, have clothing, have shelter, healthcare and education. And then with the masters in the world, they will teach humanity how to spend their time wisely. Now, it's not everybody's going to come along right away, but there are going to be large segments of society who perhaps aren't really that motivated to work for the man, but are willing to work for humanity's cause under the inspiration of Maitreya, who will start to open their hearts to others in that way. And perhaps they will do more than they're doing now. But the generation today is not wanting the same thing that the generations of the past wanted. And I think we've talked about this before. If I'm not I've talked about it in videos before, but I don't know if I've talked about it in reference to some of the comments you made, Ray. But I deal with enough of the younger generation that they have no fear of losing their job. They have no desire to work 40, 50 hours a week and then get a pension when they're 70. What I'm saying? They have no desire to that. They want their own time. And this generation is going to show not only the older generations, but the future generations how to live with automation, how to live with AI, how to have leisure. Because that's their role. That's why they're here. And it's only going to get worse. The newer generations are going to do less and less and less because they shouldn't have to. You're old school in your ways of thinking, and get outside your box, and you'll see that humanity is destined for greater things than eking out a living. We're creative gods in potential, and we just need, and we're also destined to be free. But the only way to be free is to have your needs taken care of. That's why the ultra rich are able to be as free as they are, because their needs are taken care of. Now it's just there's enough resources out there for everyone on this planet to have their needs taken care of. If you want more, you want to be a businessman or entrepreneur, if that's your thing, then you can do that. If you want to go work 80 hours a week, you can do that too. But your needs would be taken care of either way. It's a more humane way of doing things. But it's not a question of either or, but a question of and. And if you talked about socialism not working, the United States is a socialist country to a degree, but it's corporate socialism. The corporations have always gotten more money than the welfare recipients. They have. The bailouts just during COVID were more for corporations and the billionaires than they were for the working class. We are living in corporate socialism. And the lies that are perpetrated on the American people by the media, by the political parties and the economists of the world is, you don't need the money, we need the money. Give us all the money that you've paid taxes for, right? Give us the money. We'll make better use of that money than you can. That's basically what they say. And the sad thing is that people who really desperately need government assistance buy into the fact that these people are lying to them. It's a crime. But it doesn't have to be like this. And the other thing too is ultimately the principle of sharing will take place because we will see that our very future depends on it. When Maitreya shows us that, and we will have a choice, we'll see we either continue to do what we're doing and lull life on this planet, or we will try the principle of sharing and we could give us a future. We'll try it, right? But we'll see that it will cause our demise if we don't. It's not even a question of whether Gary likes it or not. It's a question of this is what humanity needs. According to what Maitreya is saying, without sharing, there will be no justice. Without justice, there will be no peace. And without peace, there will be no future. We will have no future if we don't do the principle of sharing. The other thing is, when it comes to perhaps a little bit more mainstream looking at this, automation, AI, is going to put out and disrupt countless number of industries that thought that their jobs were secure based on the technical facility that it took to do those jobs, like journalism, writing for movies, computer programming, all sorts of stuff. We don't know where automation and AI are going to really lead us. Now, a lot of people are very afraid of that, but I think that in the end of the day, when humanity tries the principle of sharing, we'll see that this technology would be very beneficial for humanity. But you can't live in a world where 80% of the workforce is out of work because of technology. It's not going to work. The governments are going to have to step in and take care of the people, whether people like it or not. Or we'll have an anarchy on our hands, really. So we'll have to do it based on the fact that we will do it based on the fact that we have to do it. We will try the principle of sharing based on the fact that we have to do it, not because we necessarily want to do it. And then once we try it, we'll see, this ain't so bad. You know what I mean? It's not so bad. You don't have to work 80 hours a week. You only have to work 15. And then the rest of the time, you can be creative and do whatever you want to do. Spend time with your family if that's what you want to do. Your dog, you could paint, you could serve humanity, you can travel the world. You can do whatever you want because you're free. And everybody can be free. And then, like I said, then the masters will teach humanity how to live with leisure. It will be the keynote of humanity's lives from this probably next generation on forward into the future. So hopefully that helps. And then, I'm not really going to get into the whole election thing because the video is getting a little long, and I don't want to end on a sour note. But anyway, we can talk about that some other time if you want. Just put another comment in there about it, and I'll do another video about it because I have some things to say about it. I just don't want to go too long. All right. Ajanad said, Gary's the new Benjamin. I guess you're assuming Benjamin Creme. I am not the new Benjamin Creme, believe me. I don't want his gig. I am just an ordinary person with extraordinary information, and I'm dumb enough to share it with total strangers. And I have for almost 30 years. So I found that YouTube is a better way of doing it than trying to spend a lot of money to get people to come to a lecture at a library. That's all it is. I'm not Benjamin Creme. I'm not claiming to be the next Benjamin Creme. And I will never say that I'm the next Benjamin Creme because I knew Benjamin Creme and I knew how hard he worked, how committed he was. And as much as I believe in this information, I'm not nearly as committed or work as hard as he had done when he was alive. So, or been able to do the things that he could do, or have the wisdom and the insight and the breadth of view that he had. I don't have that. So Shakespeare said, know thyself and to thine own self be true. And I know who I am, and I'm not Benjamin Creme. So, and the people that knew both of us, me and Ben, would tell you the exact same. Gary is not the next Benjamin Creme. So anyway, but thank you very much for listening and comment nonetheless. All right, now this one I've been kind of putting off answering, but I got to get into it. Dear Gary, according to Mr. Creme, back in 2010, Maitreya gave a major television interview in America. In Sharon magazine, for months afterwards, there was a report he gave many interviews in many countries all around the world. So what's become of that? Okay, so we'll talk about that. Here we are 14 years later, and nothing has changed. No one is talking about the interviews. You can't find anything about a man talking about sharing the world's resources anywhere online. Nobody cares what he has to say. There are no pundits in the media discussing ideas after these interviews. It's depressing as hell. You'd figure his ideas would cause a buzz on ongoing discussion, ongoing discussion. But we have nothing. The truth is nobody cares what he has to say. The silence greeting his arrival on the world stage is deafening. I despair anyone will ever listen to him or implement what he says. Please comment. And then you went on to say, James, P.S. You tried to scare people by saying things are going to have to get worse in this world. That's pretty ugly, trying to scare people like that. Well, I wasn't really trying to scare people like that. I was just expressing my view that I do think, especially economically and politically, it's going to get it can get bad unless we change our ways. If we change our ways today and start the principle of sharing, we don't have to go through all that. It doesn't really look like that's the case, right? So I do think that we are going to have to suffer as a people, as a humanity. And I'm just trying to prepare people for it. I'm not trying to scare people. I'm just trying to be realistic. That before things are incredible, before our future, we're living this future that's beyond expectation, we will have to suffer a bit. We'll have to, as Maitreya said, the economic crash will bring humanity to its knees, but also to its senses. But I'm very hopeful for the future. I talk about hope all the time. You know what I mean? But I do think that the problems of the world are teaching humanity that we're one. That's the other thing. Now, lastly about that whole thing, I don't think that humanity is ready to hear what he has to say fully until we're up against it. That's just the nature of humanity. But humanity can change very quickly. And just because things they are today doesn't mean that things won't be totally different a year from now or 2 years from now or 3 years from now or 5 years from now. Maitreya even talked about that with Benjamin Creme's own daughter, Tara, when he said to her, he appeared to her as an old man in Hyde Park. And I wasn't around, but I read it in Sharon National Magazine, and what he said to her made an impact in my life. Is he said everything in life is energy, and all that energy has its opposites. So just because you're having a bad year this year, who's to say next year you won't have the best year of your life? And then he went on to say that's why suicide is such a bad option. You might miss out on the best time of your life, or something like that. So he was also talking about humanity, that just because we're going through it now, just because it's depressing now, just because we don't see the changes that we've been wanting to see and longing to see for so long, doesn't mean that next year it won't be happening. In fact, from what I understand it, the masters are energetically allowing a lot of these divisions to happen, to take us to the brink, because the energy that's flowing through Maitreya is working with the law of cause and effect, opposite and equal and opposite reaction. So it's going to swing back the other way very quickly in an extreme way. All the divisions will eventually become very harmonious as a humanity. We'll see the other person's side. We'll be working toward the common good and those kind of things. I know it sounds utopian and idealistic now, but that's the potential of humanity based on the fact that we are as divided as we are. The other thing is Maitreya says that we can't truly make a choice with using our free will to live or die, to try the principle of sharing and live or continue on and die, unless we are as divided as we are. That's the only way, apparently. I don't understand it other than that. You know what I'm saying? I'm just relaying on what I know about the information. You know what I mean? I could be wrong, but that's just what I see. Now, what I was also talking about was the political situation here in the United States. And just because things are going to get bad here in the United States doesn't mean things aren't already bad in let's say, Uganda or other parts of Africa or in South America or whatever. You know, it's just I think it's going to get worse in the United States, you know, but tough tookies. You know, we've had a good run of it. You know, it's time to close out. You know what I mean? It just is what it is. You know, I think people in the United States need to suffer along with the other people in the world that they've been suffering for as long as they have, before we realize that we cannot continue to live like this. We've been at the top for a very, very long time, James, the United States. You know, it's not going to go on forever. It can't. It can't physically hold it up like that. It just doesn't work like that. Now, in terms of Maitreya's interviews, why people aren't really talking about it, I have I think it's 3, maybe 4 different scenarios. And I throw this out like a detective, right? Where rather than me just talking about this from an ideological standpoint, well, you know, it's got to be this or that and the other, I'm throwing in some other things that I don't necessarily think are the case. Okay, so one example of that would be Benjamin Creme was full of garbage. He was delusional and he was not speaking the truth. That is something to hold and to consider. Okay, I'm not saying I believe it. I'm not saying that my experience with Maitreya proves that that's true. Okay, the other thing is maybe he got it wrong in terms of his interview. Maybe he got everything right, and that one thing he got wrong. I don't agree with that either, but I'm just saying that's another option, right? Maitreya has never given an interview on TV. Ben got it wrong. Third thing is, maybe something else is going on that we are not aware of because we don't have somebody like Ben to really tell us what's going on. So we're kind of in the dark now. That maybe Maitreya is giving interviews on TV and he's not talking about sharing. Maybe he's talking about something else. Maybe he's talking about politics or personal motivation. Maybe he's just trying to build a history with people in order for them to trust him first. I don't know. It's an option, right? I think, personally, there's a very, very strong likelihood, based on my own personal experiences with Maitreya, I believe it to be true, that what Ben said is true, even though it's contradicting, to go back to what Aunt Brea was talking about, but talk about this, even though it was contradicting my own belief in what was going to happen when Maitreya gave his first interview and immediately after, I was thinking that he would already be out, the day of declaration would already been out, humanity would already be responding to his information and so forth, and we'd be living in a totally different world, and we're clearly not, right? So something is happening, whether it's energetically with humanity, okay? Maitreya has been having to still take this kind of subdued role in speaking when he's giving public speaking in that way on TV. The other thing is that he might, when he's speaking, not being asked questions from the journalist who's interviewing him. And the journalists always represent humanity. So if they're not asking him any questions to trigger him to say what might trigger us to recognize him as Maitreya, then it might show that humanity is not quite ready for him to say what he has to say. That's a possibility. So I'm throwing out different ideas for you to think about, okay? From what I would consider to be very unlikely, he is not, that Ben was making it all up, you know what I'm saying, to maybe there's something else going on. You know, when he's sitting down in front of a camera, whether it's on a podcast or whatever, that the interviewer is not asking him the questions that would trigger him to be able to answer in a way that it doesn't infringe upon the free will of humanity, okay? Now, the other thing is he's not giving interviews right now because there's too much going on in the world. Maybe he had to take a step back for now. I don't know. But if you look at what's going on in the world, you can see evidence of the teacher's teachings in humanity, even though they are not talking about a man. You can see marches for peace, for injustice, and they're marching for justice against an injustice, I guess is a better way of saying it, in parts of the world that were normally not conducive to those types of marches. China, Russia, Iran. Clear examples of this, right? Where people actually shed their fear of death in a very real sense to march against an injustice. You also can see more and more discussion on TV, on podcasts, in the paper, if you read the paper, you know, whatever it happens to be, in discussions and so forth about the environment and the problem of the environment and what do we do to solve the problem. People are starting to take it seriously. This is a direct result of not only the work of Maitreya, but also the work of the disciples in the world. Getting that information out there that it is a problem. So that's the other thing. And then you can also see the divisions. I think we are getting into the point where it's going to be very, very divided before Maitreya steps in and because of the love nature of who he really is, will eventually bring us together as a people. And then if you read, I'll leave you with this, then if you read one of Benjamin Creme's master's articles that was written in the late 80s, he said that right before people started to really recognize, I'm paraphrasing, so forgive me if it's off a little bit, but he said something to the effect of right before Maitreya is really recognized and comes out for who he is, ancient landmarks would be torn down and obliterated and torn down, I think is how he put it. And if you look at what happened here in the United States over the last 4 years with people tearing down Confederate statues, in Europe, they were doing the same thing with some of the World War II statues and so forth. You know, we're tearing down this stuff for something new, right? You know, those conservative types that were holding on to the past feel threatened by this new liberation of the people. But it's all the people are awakening to what's new. We just don't know where to go after that. That's why I think we need Maitreya to tell us the next step is to start the principle of sharing. Did you see what I'm saying? So if you kind of look at this stuff, and that's why I always recommend reading Benjamin Creme's Master's articles, James. It gives you a really clear sense of what's going on. And he says this so many times, irregardless of what you might be seeing on the news, or all evidence to the contrary is the way he puts it, right? Humanity is waking up. This is the process of the externalization of the hierarchy and the return of the Christ and the Masters of Wisdom. This is how it's looking. This is it. It might look differently than you and I thought it would look, but this is it. We're in the middle of it. Earth's getting hotter. People are getting sicker because of the pollution, but yet people are starting to talk about it more, starting to try to pressure their governments to do something about it finally, the corrupt governments around the world. But the media is even talking about it. Even though there's not a lot of action on it, we are talking about it. That's a good thing. We're seeing more and more evidence of UFOs and talks of UFOs. People are awakening to the fact that we're not alone in the universe. This is going to change life on planet Earth forever when we truly realize the truth that we are not alone. And it's not just, people guessing that that's the case. We will actually know it to be true. Change life on planet Earth. We're seeing more and more evidence of it. Even Donald Trump, as much as I bash the guy, let it a little bit out of the bag when he admitted that senior levels of the Pentagon were talking to not only him, but also members of Congress about UFO activity. That they were kind of letting it out, that this has been going on. You know what I'm saying? They didn't come out and say that it's true, but it was a huge step for the United States government to do that. You know what I mean? We went back just 25, 30 years ago, they just would lie about it. There's no truth to it. It's swamp gas. It's whatever. Do you see what I'm saying? Now they're actually admitting that there are talks. You know what I'm saying? Nobody would ever go to the President of the United States, whoever the president is, and tell them about UFO activity if they didn't believe it to be true. They didn't have facts on their side. They would never have done it. So these are little things that if you look, you can see the awakening of humanity. But I talked about this in a previous video, and I'm using a rhetorical phrase to really, I think, express what's going on today. It's always darkest before the dawn. You always lose hope before the hope really comes. Don't lose hope, James, or whoever's listening. It's coming. Everything's going to be fine. It might get a little worse before it gets better, but it's going to be fine in the end. So knowing what I know about the future, I'll go through all of it. I'll lose all my money, lose my house. I don't care. I'd rather have a humanity and a future for all of humanity, than to have everything stay the same as it is today. I couldn't live life like that. I can't live like this for too much longer. It's causing me too much grief. I want to see humanity come together. I want to see humanity start to see the other person's side. I want people to be free. I want there to be justice in the world. I want the principle of sharing to start. I want what Maitreya is advocating. That's why I always talk about on these videos about the priorities of Maitreya, because I know there are people like me out there that want what Maitreya is advocating. They want sharing. They might not believe he's the Christ. They might not even look to him as a great spiritual teacher, but they want what he's advocating. That's what Maitreya wants from humanity. Not some kind of blind following of who they think he might be, but he wants humanity to want what he wants. And if you talk to people in your life, James, you'll see that people who you never thought in a million years wanted peace, wanted to see justice in the world, wanted to see the environment fixed, are starting to talk about it now. We're awakening to the truths of the problems of the world. Now we have to start talking amongst ourselves, eventually amongst other people, about what is the solution. the solution, according to Maitreya, is the principle of sharing. You see what I'm saying? I love you guys. Thank you so much for the comments, everybody, and the email, James. I very much appreciate it. Hopefully it helps. You guys take care, enjoy the day, and we'll look forward to putting up another video in the very near future. Have a great day. Remember to take action and help SOP save our planet. Thanks for listening, and we look forward to talking to you again in future videos.